Hello and a warm welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. We begin with news just coming in that a Saudi man suspected of involvement in the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi has been arrested in France. Reports say Khalid Aid Al-Atobi was arrested at Charles de Gaulle Airport. He's one of 26 Saudis wanted by Turkey over the journalist's killing. The 33-year-old former Saudi royal guard was traveling under his own name and placed in judicial detention. Khashoggi, a prominent critic of the government in Riyadh, was murdered at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in October 2018. Saudi Arabia said the former Washington Post journalist had been killed in a rogue operation by a team of agents sent to persuade him to return to the kingdom. But Turkish officials said the agents acted on orders from the highest levels of the Saudi government. US President Joe Biden and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin are holding rare talks by video link amid tensions on Ukraine's eastern frontier. Moscow says the talks are needed as tensions in Europe are off the scale. Russia has moved thousands of troops to the border but insists it has no intention of attacking Ukraine. It wants guarantees Ukraine will not join NATO, but Western powers say Kyiv's sovereignty should be respected. Earlier, responding to fears of a Russian invasion, Mr. Biden agreed with leaders of the UK, France, Germany and Italy to use all the tools at their disposal. Moscow denies it has plans to attack. As we wait for more details on that call between Biden and Putin, more comments continue to follow the escalating conflict on the Russian-Ukraine border. Britain has once again stated that it stands by Ukraine and is considering extending more defensive support to the former Soviet Republic.
We are deeply concerned by Russia's pattern of military build-ups in and around Ukraine and are closely monitoring the situation. The UK is very clear. Any military incursion by Russia into Ukraine would be a strategic mistake. The Russian government should expect significant strategic consequences. The costs of an incursion would be catastrophically high. The Prime Minister has also spoken to President Zelensky on a number of occasions to reiterate the UK's support, and he raised the issue of Russia's aggression towards Ukraine directly with President Putin when they spoke ahead of COP26. Yesterday, our Prime Minister met with President Biden and the leaders of France, Germany, Italy to ensure a joint message will be given to President Putin. We have also helped to frame the international sanctions against Russia, deepened NATO's partnership with UK, led efforts in the UN and OSCE to hold Russia to account, and militarily, the member for the Isle of
Well, Latvia also says the West must send a strong message to Russia to deter it from invading Ukraine, including cutting Russia off from the SWIFT payment system, sanctioning the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and strengthening NATO's eastern flank.
First, we need to prepare very strong political and economic sanctions package. I would not exclude things like sanctioning Nord Stream 2, disconnecting from SWIFT, and I think that Russia needs to know in advance what is the economic price tag. Political price tag, of course, it's again about all the international organizations being used just to keep pressure, but we know that political pressure is not enough. Second, I do believe that in that case, NATO needs to increase its presence in what we call eastern flank, just to show Russia that the price for doing some military adventure in Ukraine is more troops, more defense capability, and I underline defense capability in the Baltic states, in Poland, in Romania, in Bulgaria, those NATO countries that are actually directly affected by such kind of adventure.
So another issue making headlines at this hour, China has condemned a planned US diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Winter Olympics and threatens to retaliate. A foreign ministry spokesman says China would take resolute countermeasures, but did not give further details. On Monday, the US said it would not send diplomats to Beijing over concerns about China's human rights record. At a media briefing today, China accused the US of violating political neutrality in sports and says the proposed boycott is based on lies and rumors. Tensions are high between both countries. The US has accused China of genocide in its repression of the Uruguay minority in the western region of Xinjiang, an allegation China has strongly denied. On the Winter Olympics, New Zealand has also announced that it will not be sending diplomatic representatives to the Beijing Winter Olympics in February. Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson says this decision was due to a range of factors and not due to US decision.
So we've already made clear that we won't be represented there at a ministerial level. We made that clear to China, I think, in October. And so for us, that's a decision we've already made. Range of factors, but mostly to do with COVID and the fact that the logistics of travel and so on around COVID are not conducive to that kind of trip. But we've made clear to China on numerous occasions our concerns about human rights issues, as recently as the Prime Minister talking to President Xi. So they're well aware of our view on human rights, but we had already made the decision not to attend.
Well, let's cross over now to Washington, where our correspondent Maria Bird is on ground for us. Maria, let's begin with the highly anticipated meeting between President Biden and his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. What are you hearing?
Well, we are hearing that this is going to be one of those pivotal moments in his administration. I mean, this is a very early, very serious, concentrated, focused meeting between the two. It's going to be on a secured line, it's a video conference, and we know that typically, in the past administration, Russia was almost as if an ally, a very different relationship with Russia than we had seen in years before. And so this is going to definitely take a different turn than what we've seen from the previous administration as it relates to Russia. It's very clear that if they do invade Ukraine, that they can look at economic sanctions. And now the real question is, beyond economic sanctions, what else is the U.S. potentially looking at?
Yeah, and that actually leads me to my next question. Overall, what can we expect? We just heard there a few minutes ago Britain and Latvia speaking quite strongly on sanctions against Russia. Are there any indications that the US is planning a military response to this conflict in addition to those economic sanctions?
Well, the U.S. has removed itself greatly from the Middle East. We know that a lot of that war has ended, Afghanistan and all of the other areas in that Middle East region. And so that the question is whether or not that was strategic in nature and whether or not we could potentially see additional forces. Now, there is no confirmed, information from the Department of Defense or Homeland Security that is the plan of the president. But I would say that depending on exactly what comes out of this and exactly what happened with Ukraine in the next couple of days, and as the U.S. has stood up for human rights issues and human rights violations, we will begin to potentially see that the U.S. could become a little bit stronger than just those economic sanctions.
Maria, I just want to briefly turn our attention to the other story making headlines today, and that's the dispute to do with the Winter Olympics in Beijing. The U.S. has said it will boycott the Games. Does this mean American athletes will be barred from taking part?
No, American athletes will be able to take part. This is going to be kind of the government presence there, the official presence of the U.S. Dignitaries being present at the Games. And I think that is really what the president has focused in on. As we know, these athletes have been in preparation for quite some time. Now, the question is, whether or not some of the U.S. athletes are going to follow suit with the government and with the dignitaries and themselves remove themselves from the Winter Games. And I think that it's so early in the conversation that that will only become clearer as we get closer to the time to the Games.
Well, China has, of course, reacted, threatening to retaliate, saying the U.S. will pay the price for the move. Has the Biden administration in any way reacted to this latest development?
Well, the U.S. has taken the same stance that it's been taking over the past few months, is that they are very clear on where they stand with the human rights violations and what they believe that China should be doing, and how they believe that China and the U.S. relationship should move forward. We know that the President Biden has been very clear on his expectations and his hopes for the relationship. We know that we assumed that the relationship between the U.S. and China was going to improve just due to the economic powerhouses that both countries are. But we also have seen here in the recent days that the president is taking a very clear stance as it relates to human rights.
All right then, Maria, thank you so much for the update.
Thank you for having me.
To other stories now, just 5% of Afghans who applied for help to flee the country under one UK scheme after the Taliban takeover received help, with some left behind having been killed since the collapse of Kabul. And that's according to claims by a whistleblower. In evidence published by the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Raphael Marshall, who worked for the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office during the evacuation effort, told how at one point he was the only person monitoring an inbox where pleas for help were directed. He added that the then Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, was slow to make decisions. After the Taliban took control of Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, the UK airlifted 15,000 people out of the country, including 5,000 British nationals, 8,000 Afghans and 2,000 children. Meanwhile, reacting to another accusation by the whistleblower, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says suggestion he intervened in the evacuation of Kabul in August to prioritise the passage of animals is complete nonsense.
No, that's complete nonsense, but what I can tell you is that I think that the operation of pitting to airlift 15,000 people out of Kabul in the way that we did over the summer was one of the outstanding military achievements of the last 50 years or more. And I think that the role of the Foreign Office, the role of the of Border Force, everybody involved in it, the Home Office officials, they did an absolutely outstanding job. Processing very, very... what I can tell you is that all the guidelines were observed, continue to be observed, and what I can also tell you is that we're getting on with the job as we have been throughout, of dealing with the priorities of the people, particularly fighting crime.
So was it a party where the guidelines were followed, or was it not a party?
I can tell you that the guidelines were followed at all times.
Well, did you investigate that yourself? Have you satisfied yourself that
I have satisfied myself that the guidelines were followed at all times. And what I can also tell you is that we're focusing on the issues that matter to me above all, and that is fighting crime, and I believe those are the things that matter also to the British public. So it's not good.
Let's check in on updates from the COVID-19 pandemic now. WHO's regional director for Europe says vaccine mandates are an absolute last resort. Plus, Uganda detects East Africa's first case of the Omicron variant. Here's a roundup of the latest developments from around the world on our global update.
Yeah. Done.
As more countries consider making coronavirus vaccination mandatory, the World Health Organization has cautioned that inoculation mandates should be seen as an absolute last resort.
Mandates around vaccination are an absolute last resort and only applicable when all other feasible options to improve vaccination uptake have been exhausted. They have proven effective in some environments to increase vaccine uptake. But the effectiveness of mandates is very context-specific.
During a WHO briefing, the regional director for Europe adds that while the Omicron variant is in sight and on the rise, it is the Delta variant that is the problem in the region right now. In the UK, new rules for people traveling to the country have come into force to limit the spread of the new Omicron variant. From today, all travelers aged 12 and over will have to show proof of a negative PCR or lateral flow test, even if they are fully vaccinated, taken no more than 2 days before departing for the UK. There are currently 437 confirmed cases of the highly mutated COVID strain in the UK. Uganda has become the first country in East Africa to detect the Omicron variant of the coronavirus. The country's Ministry of Health says 7 cases of the variant have been confirmed in the country. It says 5 of the cases arrived from Nigeria, while 2 arrived from South Africa. And finally, almost 70 medics who attended a large Christmas party in southern Spain have since tested positive for COVID-19. Most of the 68 infected are doctors and nurses working in the intensive care unit at Malaga's regional hospital. Authorities say the infected staff were all fully vaccinated and are showing no symptoms.
Over in Burundi, at least 38 people have died and scores more have been injured in a fire which tore through a prison. Vice President Prosper Bazumbanza says the blaze hit an overcrowded facility in the capital Gitega with at least 69 people seriously injured. Images circulating online show a building engulfed in flames and piles of bodies said to be of inmates in the jail. Despite capacity for 400 prisoners, Gitega prison held 1,539 inmates as of last month. In August, another fire broke out at the same prison, which authorities blamed on electrical problems. That blaze caused no casualties. At least 4 people have been killed and 4 others injured in an explosion that rocked the center of Iraq's southern city of Basra. According to the military, a motorcycle rigged with explosives was the cause of the blast, which sent a column of black smoke into the sky. The blast took place near a main hospital, setting fire to at least 1 vehicle and damaging a minibus. The death toll from the weekend's volcanic eruption in Indonesia has risen to at least 34 people. The country's National Disaster Agency says Mount Semeru engulfed villages in volcanic ash and hot mud on the island of Java, forcing thousands to flee. 17 people are still missing. Emergency teams and rescue dogs are looking for survivors and bodies. The operation has been complicated by dangerous conditions and bad weather in the area. The volcano remains active, with smaller eruptions continuing since the weekend. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has met with the President of Cyprus in Jerusalem in the framework of the Israel-Greece-Cyprus trilateral summit. According to a statement from Mr. Bennett's office, Israeli Energy Minister also attended the meeting. Prime Minister Bennett says it is important that positive forces work together in securing the prosperity, defense, economy of the Eastern Mediterranean.
Our relationships with our friends on all levels. And indeed, together we're stronger. And our meeting today is a testimony of that. We're advancing our East Med energy connection and taking the cooperation to new heights. We're collaborating on our fight against COVID. We're all facing COVID and Omicron and climate change. And we're expanding our ties in the fields of security, economy, technology, tourism, and emergency services. When one country has a forest fire, why can't the other countries come in and help?
The United Arab Emirates has announced that all government entities will adopt a new working week schedule that will consist of 4.5 days, with Friday afternoon, Saturday and Sunday forming the new weekend. The move will come into effect on January the 1st, 2022, making the working week more in line with Western schedules. The UAE currently has a Fridays to Saturday weekend, which corresponds to the same model other countries in the region follow. The government says the transition is in line with the UAE's vision to enhance its global competitiveness across economic and business sectors and to keep pace with global development. Australian scientists and artists are looking to hold the world accountable for the Earth's future by creating what they describe as an indestructible storage device to record humanity's handling of the climate change crisis. Inspired by an aeroplane's flight recorder called the Earth's Black Box, will be built in 2022 on the remote west coast of Tasmania. Its creators, ranging from marketing communications company Clemger BBDO to the University of Tasmania, say the structure will record every step that humanity takes towards or away from the impending climate catastrophe. This comes after UN climate talks in Glasgow ended last month with a deal that kept alive hopes of capping global warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius.
Earth Black Box is a structure and device that will record every step that humanity takes towards or away from the impending climate catastrophe. We're at a critical juncture of the climate catastrophe. I think that, you know, we've been stalling with a lot of inaction, and the point of the Earth Black Box, it has a multitude of uses. I think the first one, just like an aeroplane black box flight recorder, if the worst is to happen, and you know, as a civilization, we do crash as a result of climate change.
And finally on the programme, a German household has taken Christmas to a new level. They've set up 444 Christmas trees for a new world record. Thomas and Suzanne Jeremine have done this for 10 years. Their latest display features 10,000 Christmas balls along with 300 strings of fairy lights across their house. And no two trees are the same. The couple began preparations months before Christmas to have it ready for the first Advent day in Germany. The family hopes to continue this tradition into the future as they've yet to face any threat to their world dominance. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tenyola Shiboale. Bye for now.